Chief. Chief Hutchins, can you come look at this? The nurse's voice cuts through the triage tent. Everyone stops. On the gurney, a woman who spent 48 hours buried under 6 floors of concrete watches a Master Chief with 30 years of service turn a small laminated card over in his hands. Watches his face change. This clearance card, he says slowly, was created 12 years ago. Closed the same week it was created. Nobody has touched it since. Silence, real silence, the kind that has weight. It's mine, she says. It's been mine the whole time. Because the name printed on that card belongs to someone the government declared dead over a decade ago. Because the building that fell on her did not fall by accident. And because the man who ordered it done once sat at her father's picnic table, ruffled her hair, and called her kiddo. Her name is Nora Kessler, and she has been waiting 12 years for this.
The dust does not settle. Not really. It hangs there in the collapsed stairwell like it is waiting for something. Like it knows. 48 hours. That is how long Nora Kessler has been buried under 6 floors of the Bellhaven Annex in Norfolk, Virginia. 6 floors that used to be a mid-rise office building. Now it is a tomb of rebar and drywall dust and the smell of scorched insulation. Somewhere above her, a rescue dog barks twice, then stops, then barks again. She hears it before she hears anything else, the bark. Not the voices, not the machines grinding through concrete, the bark first, because some part of her brain, some old part, some part her father built brick by brick in a cabin in Montana 20 years ago, still knows how to listen for the thing that matters. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. She counts. She has been counting for 2 days. Her right leg is pinned under a slab of concrete that used to be part of the 3rd floor break room. She knows this because she can see through a gap no wider than a mail slot the corner of a vending machine. Snickers bars. Dented, upside down. She has had 2 days to think about Snickers bars, and it is, frankly, the least of what is wrong with her. The gap lets in light, thin, gray. Enough. Enough to see her own hands. Enough to see the blood dried black across her knuckles. Enough to see the strap of her bag, the one thing she grabbed before the world came down, still looped around her wrist, like she knew. Like some animal instinct told her, hold on to this no matter what. Hold on to this because it is the only thing that will tell them who you are. Except it will not. Not the truth, not really. Voices now, close, real. I've got movement, southeast quadrant, level 3. Hold up, I've got a void. A man's voice. Rough with 2 days of no sleep. She knows that particular kind of rough. Her father's voice used to sound like that. Toward the end. Toward the end. Don't. Not now. Copy that, Pruitt. Hold position. We're bringing the camera down. Another voice, older, level in a way that has been built over 20 years of telling other men not to panic, while everything around them is actively on fire. She tries to call out. Her voice comes out as a scrape, a whisper with nothing behind it. 2 days of dust in her throat and no water since the 2nd hour. She tries again. Here. That is all. 1 word. It is enough. I've got a voice. I've got a voice. Southeast level 3. Hold, everybody. Boots, fast. The scrape of debris being cleared by hand because the machines cannot get close enough without bringing the rest of the floor down on her head. A face appears at the gap. Young. 29, maybe. Eyes wide with the particular kind of shock that comes from finding someone alive when you have stopped expecting to. Ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear me?
My name's Pruitt. HM2 Ezra Pruitt. I'm a corpsman. I need you to stay with me, okay? Stay right there. Like she has a choice. Like she has anywhere else to be. She almost laughs. The laugh turns into a cough that turns into something that scrapes her ribs raw. Not going anywhere, she manages. And there it is. The first thing she says to the man who will later, much later, in a hospital hallway that smells like bleach and bad coffee go, completely still, actually stop moving clipboard in hand when he finally understands who he pulled out of a building. But that is later. Right now, he is just a young corpsman with a headlamp and a med kit, army crawling through a gap in the rubble, talking to her the way you talk to someone you are trying to keep alive with your voice alone. Okay, good. That's good. I need you to tell me your name. Here it is, the lie she has told so many times it barely feels like one anymore. Nora Kessler. Okay, Nora. I need you to know something. We are going to get you out of here, whatever it takes. She believes him. That is the strange part. 2 days trapped under a building that fell down around her on purpose. She knows this. The way you know your own heartbeat, the way you know things without being able to explain how, and she believes this stranger with the headlamp more than she has believed anyone in 12 years. Because that is the thing about the truth. It does not announce itself. It just sits there in your chest, quiet, until the right person cracks you open. The concrete groans above her. Pruitt freezes. So does she. That's not good, he says. No, she agrees. It's not. And somewhere, impossibly, she wants to laugh again. It takes another 6 hours to get her out. 6 hours of Pruitt's voice level as a metronome, talking to her about nothing. About his sister's wedding in Ohio, and the caterer who canceled the week before, and how his mother threatened to make the toast herself if nobody else stepped up. About a dog he had growing up that used to steal his boots and bury them in the same 3 spots every single time, like a ritual he never grew out of respecting. About anything. Everything. Whatever keeps a woman with a crushed leg and a concussion and 2 days of no water tethered to consciousness, while a team of engineers argues in tense whispers about load-bearing walls 20 feet above her head. Tell me about the caterer, she rasps somewhere around hour 3, because the alternative is thinking about the weight above her, and she has decided quite firmly not to think about the weight above her. The caterer, Pruitt says, quit over a text message. 1 text message, 4 days before the wedding. What did it say? I don't know. My sister won't tell anyone, which is somehow worse than knowing. Small mercies, Nora says, and something that might almost be a laugh moves through her chest, cracked and dusty, but real. There she is, Pruitt says. Keep that. Whatever that was, keep doing that. When they finally lift the slab off her leg, she does not scream. She wants to. God, she wants to. But screaming was never something her father taught her, and 27 years of his voice in her head, level low, don't give them anything they didn't earn, wins out even now, even here, even half-conscious, and being dragged out on a backboard into daylight so bright it feels like being born. Someone is counting down. 3, 2, 1. Light. Real light. Not the thin gray thread through a mail slot gap. Actual sky. The color of a bruise, healing dusk settling over Norfolk like a held breath finally let out. She hears cheering, distant, muffled through the ringing in her ears. And then she hears the other voice, the one that will matter. Chief, we got a live one. Female, mid-20s, crush injury to the right leg. Possible concussion. Exposure. She's talking. She's oriented, but she's been down there 2 days, Chief. I don't know how she's get her to the triage tent. Move! Older voice. Command voice. The kind that does not shake even when everything around it is shaking. Master Chief Dale Hutchins. She will not know his name for another hour, but she will never forget the sound of it. Level, the way her father used to be level. Level in a way that makes her chest hurt for reasons that have nothing to do with the concrete that spent 2 days trying to kill her. The triage tent smells like antiseptic and diesel fumes and somebody's cigarette smoke drifting in from outside. They cut her jeans off at the seam. Somebody starts an IV. Somebody else is shining a light in her eyes, asking her to follow their finger, asking her what day it is, what year it is, who is the president. She answers all of it, correctly. Because whatever else is broken in her body, her mind is still hers. Still sharp, still counting, still watching, still doing the thing her father trained into her before she was old enough to understand why a man would spend a childhood teaching his daughter to notice everything. Notice everything. Say nothing you do not have to. A nurse, young, tired, kind eyes, goes through her bag, standard procedure. personal effects, identification. Okay, we've got a, That word, small word, should mean nothing. It means everything. Nora's eyes track the nurse's hands even though her head feels like it is underwater. Watches her pull out a slim laminated card. Government issued. The kind that means something to people who know what it means. The nurse frowns at it, turns it over, frowns harder. Chief Hutchins, can you come look at this? And there he is, Dale Hutchins, 58 years old, face like a topographic map of every hard year he has ever lived through, stepping into the tent with the unhurried authority of a man who has seen every kind of disaster there is and stopped being surprised by most of them. Until now. He takes the card, reads it. His face does not change, not exactly, but something behind his eyes shifts, recalibrates. The way a man's face moves when the ground he is standing on turns out to be built over something much deeper than he expected. "Where did you get this?" he says. Not a question, a demand wearing the clothes of a question. Nora's throat is dust and blood and 2 days of silence. "It's mine," she says. "This clearance card," Hutchins says slowly, "was created 12 years ago. Closed the same week it was created. Nobody has touched it since. Until you." Silence in the tent. Real silence, the kind that has weight. "It's mine," Nora says again. "It's been mine the whole time." They do not let her explain. Not there, not with a leg that needs surgery and a body running on adrenaline fumes and a concussion protocol that overrides every other concern in the room. She is loaded into an ambulance. Pruitt rides with her, his hand wrapped around hers. Not because protocol says to, but because some instinct in him, the same instinct that will one day make him a very good father, though he does not know that yet, tells him this woman should not be alone right now. "You gonna tell me what that was about?" he asks. Quiet, just between them. "No," she says. Fair enough. A pause. The ambulance hits a pothole and they both wince. "You want to tell me something else instead?" She almost smiles. Almost. "Finish the wedding story," she says. "Seriously, I've got nothing else to think about that isn't worse." So he finishes it. Tells her about the backup caterer his mother found at 11 at night, a woman who ran a barbecue trailer outside Dayton and agreed to cater a wedding for 200 people with 4 days' notice, because in her words, weddings are just funerals with better lighting. And I've never turned down either. Tells her about his sister crying with relief in the parking lot of a gas station. Tells her, without quite meaning to, that he has not been home in 8 months and does not know when he will be again. "Thank you," Nora says when he finishes, "for the 6 hours. Wasn't going to leave you down there. Some people would have." "Some people are wrong," Pruitt says, and there is something in his voice, some flash of the man he will become, older, a father someday soon, though he does not know it yet. A husband to a woman who does not exist in his life yet either. And Nora, half-conscious and bleeding and carrying a dead name into a hospital in Norfolk, feels something in her chest crack open just slightly, just enough to let a little light in. She closes her eyes. The Snickers bar. Upside down. Dented. She does not know why that is the thing she thinks about as the sirens wail her toward the hospital, but some part of her small, exhausted human thinks, "I lived. I actually lived." And another part, older, colder, trained by a dead man in a Montana cabin, "They flagged your card already." Which means someone is already asking questions, which means somebody, somewhere, is about to find out exactly who buried you alive. And why. 12 years earlier, Kessler cabin, Flathead Valley, Montana. The rifle is too big for her. That much is obvious to anyone watching. A 15-year-old girl, all elbows and stubbornness, trying to hold steady a weapon that weighs almost a third of what she does. Her father does not help her hold it. That is not how he teaches. "Breathe," Walter Kessler says, voice low, voice like gravel that has been smoothed by a river for 30 years. Not fast, not slow. Just breathe like you don't know I'm watching. "I know you're watching," Nora mutters. "That's the whole problem." Then stop thinking about me. Think about the can. 200 yards downrange, a soup can sits on a fence post dented from 100 previous failures. Nora's failures. Her father never dents. "What if I miss?" she says. "Then you miss." "That's it? That's the whole answer?" Walter crouches beside her, does not touch the rifle, does not correct her grip. He just watches her face the way he watches everything, like a man cataloging a piece of information he will need later, though later for what, she never quite knows. "You know what your grandfather used to tell me?" he says. "You've told me 1,000 times. Tell me anyway, out loud. It helps you breathe." She exhales, long, slow. "He said the rifle doesn't care if you're scared. The rifle doesn't care if you're a girl. The rifle doesn't care about anything except whether you do the work right. And the work is the same work no matter who's doing it. Good girl." A pause. The wind shifts just slightly and Walter's eyes flick to the grass, to the way it bends, calculating something Nora does not yet have the vocabulary for. Not yet. She will. "Adjust 2 clicks left. Wind's picking up." She adjusts, breathes, fires. The can jumps off the post like it has been slapped by God. Walter does not smile, not exactly, but something in his shoulders loosens, something that might be pride if her father were a man who let pride show on his face the way other fathers did. "Again," he says. "Dad, again, Nora. Because the day is coming when you only get 1 shot, and I need to know you'll take it." She does not understand, not then, what he means by that. She is 15. She thinks he is talking about hunting season, about elk, about deer, about the practical business of a Montana winter. She does not know that 11 years ago, in the quiet architecture of his own career, her father made a decision that is even now gathering itself into a debt somebody intends to collect. She does not know that the man teaching her to breathe against the wind is not just a father, that the careful, patient way he catalogs everything, the way the grass bends, the way a stranger's car idles too long at the end of their long gravel driveway, the way a phone rings twice and stops and rings again, is not a personality quirk. It is vigilance. And vigilance, she will learn, is not something you practice. It is something you survive. "Again," he says. She fires, the can jumps. That night over dinner he tells her a story she will not understand the shape of for another 12 years. A story about a friend, about mercy given to a man who did not deserve it, and what a man does with mercy when it is handed to him free of charge. "You gave him 30 days, young Nora repeats, more interested in her food than the story, the way 15-year-olds are entitled to be. "What happened after 30 days? Walter is quiet for a long moment, long enough that she looks up. "I'm still finding out," he says. She does not know, eating dinner in a warm kitchen with the wood stove ticking and the Montana dark pressing soft against the windows, that this is the closest her father will ever come to warning her. Present day, Norfolk Naval Medical Center. The surgery takes 4 hours. When Nora wakes, the first thing she registers is the ceiling. Off-white, water-stained. In one corner, the shape almost like a rifle stock if you squint, which, of course, her mind goes there. Of course it does. The second thing she registers is Dale Hutchins sitting in a plastic chair beside her bed, looking like a man who has not slept and does not intend to until he gets an answer. "You're awake," he says. "Observant," she rasps. "Funny. My daughter would have liked you." He does not smile when he says it. There is a weight underneath the words, something old. "She's 26, about your age." "Is that supposed to make me trust you?" "No, it's supposed to make you understand that I've spent 30 years learning to read people, and right now I am reading a woman who is lying to me about her name, and I would very much like to know why, before I have to decide whether that lie is dangerous to the people in this hospital." Nora studies him, really studies him. The gray at his temples buzzed close, the scar along his jaw old, healed, pale. The way he sits like a man who has spent half his life waiting in rooms exactly like this one for news he does not want. She recognizes something in him, Not his face, his posture. The specific stillness of a man who has lost people and learned the hard way to carry it without letting it show. "What was the card?" she says finally. Not a question, an invitation. Hutchins reaches into his jacket, produces it, sets it on the blanket between them like a piece of evidence in a trial neither of them has agreed to attend yet. "Elizabeth Marsh," he reads. "Contractor Clearance, Department of Defense, created and closed inside the same week 12 years ago.
Which means, according to every system I have access to, Elizabeth Marsh does not exist. Has not existed since the week she was made."
"I know," Nora says quietly. "You want to tell me why you're carrying a dead identity in your bag?" She looks at the water stain on the ceiling, the almost rifle shape. "Because I am Elizabeth Marsh," she says.
Or I became her when I needed somewhere to disappear to.
Hutchins does not react, does not blink, but his hand resting on his knee curls slightly, just slightly. "And Nora Kessler, also me. Just the part of me that's allowed to exist in public. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got right now."
Silence stretches. Somewhere down the hall a monitor beeps, patient, indifferent to the two of them and the 12-year-old not sitting between their chairs.
12 years ago, Hutchins says slowly, like he is turning a key in a lock he is not sure he wants to open, "I had a teammate. Best sniper I ever served with. Man could read wind like most people read a room.
We lost him in what the official report called a training accident." Nora's chest goes very still.
"His name," Hutchins says, "was Walter Kessler." The room narrows, just for a second, just enough that Nora has to remind herself to breathe. In for 4, hold for 4. "That's my father," she says. And Dale Hutchins, Master Chief Dale Hutchins, 30 years of service, a man who has stood in rooms with generals and refused to flinch, goes very, very quiet.
"There was no training accident," Nora says. Her voice does not shake. She will not let it. "My father did not die in a training accident, and I have spent 12 years finding out exactly what happened to him, which is why I don't exist anymore, which is why the building I was in 3 days ago came down on purpose. Because somebody finally realized I was getting close." Norfolk Naval Medical Center Physical Therapy Wing the following day. The crutches are new. So is the particular indignity of learning to walk again on a leg that used to know how to run silent through a Montana tree line without snapping a single twig. "You're overcorrecting," Ezra says, arms crossed, leaning against the parallel bars like he has all the time in the world, which, technically, off-duty for the next 6 hours, he does. "Stop trying to hide the limp. Nobody's grading you on form." "I am," Nora mutters, gritting through another step. "Of course you are." He shakes his head, something fond in it. "Your father teach you that too? Grade yourself on everything?" "He taught me that if you're going to do a thing, do it exactly right or don't bother." Sounds exhausting. You have no idea. She makes it to the end of the bars, grips the rail, breathes, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4.
An old habit, one Ezra has noticed twice now without commenting on it, though she can tell by the small furrow between his eyebrows that he has clocked it as exactly what it is. Discipline built somewhere else, somewhere before Norfolk, somewhere before any of this. "Can I ask you something?" he says. "You're going to, whether I say yes or not. Fair." He shifts his weight off the bars closer. 6 hours in that gap. "You never once asked me to promise you'd make it out. Most people do. It's usually the first thing out of their mouth once the fear catches up to them." Nora looks at the far wall, at nothing in particular. "My father used to say promises are just wishes wearing a uniform," she says. "I don't put much stock in either one." That's bleak. That's accurate. "Can be both," Ezra says, and there is no judgment in it, just a kind of gentle, curious patience that she is not used to receiving from anyone, let alone a near stranger who spent 6 hours keeping her alive with stories about barbecue trailers and stolen boots.
For what it's worth, I would have promised you anyway.
even knowing it might not hold. She looks at him then, really looks, at the tired kindness in his face, the fresh cut above his eyebrow already starting to scab, the steadiness of a man young enough to still believe some promises are worth making, even when you cannot guarantee them. "Why?" she asks. "Because sometimes the promise is the only rope a person's got to hold on to," Ezra says simply. "Doesn't matter if it's guaranteed. Matters that somebody was willing to hand it to you." Nora does not have an answer for that, not one she trusts herself to say out loud without her voice doing something she has spent 12 years training it not to do. So she takes another step instead, and another, until the length of the parallel bars is behind her and Ezra is applauding quietly like it is the smallest, most important thing he has witnessed all week. Maybe it is. The Hutchins house, rural Virginia, 2 days later. Marlene Hutchins has a way of making a kitchen feel like the safest place on earth. Nora notices this the moment she is helped through the back door on crutches, the smell of something simmering, chicken, rosemary, bread, wrapping around her like a blanket she did not know she needed. "Sit," Marlene says, not a request. Nora sits. Marlene is close to 60, silver hair pulled back, hands that move with the brisk competence of a woman who spent 20 years as a Navy nurse and has not lost a bit of it since retiring. She sets a bowl of soup down in front of Nora without asking if she is hungry, because the answer to that question in Marlene's experience is always yes, whether the person knows it or not. "Dale tells me you've had a hell of a week," Marlene says. "That's one word for it. He also tells me you knew Walt Kessler." Nora's spoon stops halfway to her mouth. "I was his daughter." Marlene does not gasp, does not clutch her chest. She just goes still for a moment the way people go still when a name they buried a long time ago is suddenly standing in their kitchen alive, eating soup. "I met your father twice," she says finally. "Once at a Christmas party on base, years before you were born, I'd guess, and once at his funeral. Which wasn't really his funeral, was it? Because you're sitting in my kitchen right now." "No," Nora says. "It wasn't." Marlene sits across from her, reaches out, does not quite touch her hand but hovers close enough that Nora understands the gesture is there if she wants it. "I'm not going to pretend I understand what you've been carrying," Marlene says. "But I raised 2 boys with a husband who disappeared for months at a time and came back different every single time. I know what it costs to love someone in this life. I know what it costs to lose them and not get the truth about how." Nora's eyes burn. She blinks it back, hard. "I don't cry," she says, almost apologetic. "I know the type," Marlene says gently. "Married one, raised a house full of them." A pause. "You don't have to cry here, but you don't have to hold it together either, not in my kitchen." And something about that, something about a stranger's kitchen and rosemary chicken and a woman who buried her own fear 30 years ago and learned to feed people through it instead, cracks the last brick in the wall Nora has been building since she was 15 years old, watching a soup can jump off a fence post while her father taught her that grief was something you carried quietly alone forever. She does not sob. She is not built for that anymore, not after everything. But one tear falls, just one, into the soup, silent as everything else in her life has learned to be. Marlene says nothing, just reaches across the table and rests her hand, finally fully, over Nora's. NCIS Field Office, Norfolk, the next morning. The investigator's name is Special Agent Renata Diaz, and she has the particular exhaustion of a woman who has spent 36 straight hours staring at a demolished building and does not like what the building is telling her. She sits at Nora's hospital bedside with a laptop open, photographs of the Belhaven Annex arranged across the screen like a puzzle nobody wants to solve. "Gas leak," Diaz says, was the initial call, which is what the building department wants it to be. Faster paperwork, no investigation, everybody goes home. "But," Dale says, standing by the window, arms crossed. "But there's no gas line failure anywhere near the point of collapse," Diaz says. "What there is a charring pattern on 2 support columns consistent with a shaped charge. Small, professional, placed by someone who understood exactly which columns to take out,
to bring down that specific stairwell and nothing else. Nora's stomach goes cold. You're saying someone targeted that stairwell specifically? I'm saying, Diaz says, turning her laptop so Nora can see the photograph, the blackened scarring along the base of a column that used to hold up 6 floors, that whoever did this did not want to bring down a building. They wanted to bring down one person in it. And they were good enough to almost make it look like an accident. Almost, Nora repeats. Almost, Diaz says, because you survived. Which means either they got sloppy or you got lucky or both. I don't believe in luck, Nora says quietly. Diaz studies her for a long moment, the particular scrutiny of a federal investigator deciding how much to say to a woman who is, on paper, nobody at all, a contractor with a clearance card that closed itself 12 years ago, sitting in a hospital bed with a story that does not match any file in any system Diaz has access to. Then I'd start believing in enemies, Diaz says, because somebody spent real money and real expertise trying to kill you specifically 3 days ago in a building you had no public reason to be in. And I don't close files on things like that. I just don't always get to keep working them once certain people upstairs decide the paperwork's cleaner as a gas leak. Meaning I've got about a week before somebody quietly reassigns this, Diaz says. So, if you know something, now's the time. Nora looks at Dale. Dale looks back and something passes between them. An old soldier's instinct, recognizing the exact moment a door is closing and deciding together whether to walk through it or let it shut. I know some of it, Nora says finally. I don't know all of it yet. Then we'd better move fast, Diaz says, closing her laptop, because whoever built that charge isn't going to wait for us to catch up. Diaz leaves a card on the tray table beside the untouched Jell-O, and for a long moment after the door clicks shut behind her, neither Dale nor Nora speaks. She's not wrong, Dale says finally. About the week? About all of it. He rubs a hand over his jaw, the gesture of a man doing arithmetic he does not like the answer to. Somebody with real resources found you, which means whoever's behind this has reach into places a federal investigator can walk right past without knowing it's there. Which is exactly the kind of reach my father used to warn me about, Nora says. The kind that doesn't show up on an org chart. Living room, Hutchins' house. That evening, Dale stands by the window looking out at the dark tree line when Ezra Pruitt lets himself in through the back door without knocking, the way he has clearly done 100 times before. His uniform is different now, off-duty, and there is a fresh butterfly bandage above one eyebrow that was not there in the triage tent, a souvenir from the last 2 days of digging other people out of other buildings. He drops his bag by the door and looks at Nora on the couch leg, propped crutches leaning against the armrest. There she is, he says. Was starting to think I imagined the whole thing. You still owe me the ending of the wedding story, Nora says. You disappeared before the reception. Something flickers across his face, surprise maybe, or something warmer than surprise. You remember that? I remember every word you said for 6 hours, Nora says. It was that, or listen to a building groan. I chose the wedding. A small, surprised laugh escapes him. He catches it like he is not sure he is allowed to laugh yet, given everything. Reception went fine, he says, sitting on the arm of the opposite couch. Barbecue trailer saved the day. My sister cried twice, once from stress, once from joy. In that order. Efficient, Nora says. That's my family for you. He glances toward Dale, then back to her, something in his posture settling now that the joke has run its course. Chief filled me in, some of it, enough. Enough for what? Enough to know we're not just talking about a gas leak anymore. Dale turns from the window. His face in the low lamplight looks older than it did that morning. We're talking, he says slowly, about a man I served with for 6 years, a man I trusted with my life more times than I can count, and a daughter he never told me existed, carrying evidence that he was murdered instead of killed in an accident I signed my own name to as a witness. The room goes silent. You signed the report, Nora says quietly. I signed what I was told to sign, Dale says, and for the first time something raw slips through his composure. I was overseas. I got a phone call. I got a folder with an official seal on it, and I was told my friend died doing something reckless and stupid. And God help me, Nora, I believed it, because it was easier than the alternative. What's the alternative? Dale looks at her, really looks at her the way you look at someone when you are about to hand them something heavy. The alternative, he says, is that somebody we both trusted killed him and has spent 12 years making sure nobody asked the right questions. Ezra shifts forward, elbows on his knees. So what happens now? Dale's jaw tightens, not from anger, from decision. Now, he says, we ask the right questions. Nora looks between the two men, one old enough to be the father she lost, one young enough to remind her, faintly, achingly, of the life she might have had if a building had not fallen on her 3 days ago, and feels something shift inside her chest, something that has been braced, coiled, alone for 12 years, finally leaning just slightly into the presence of other people willing to carry the weight with her. There's someone else, she says, someone my father trusted more than almost anyone, a friend from before I was born. If what I've found is right, if the money trail I've been chasing for years actually connects, then he's not just someone who might know what happened. She pauses, swallows. The next words cost her something to say out loud after 12 years of only thinking them in the dark. He's the one who ordered it. Dale's face does not move, but his hands at his sides curl slowly into fists. Name, he says. Nora looks at the window, at the dark tree line beyond it. At the version of Virginia night that looks, if she squints, almost like the Montana dark she grew up under, different stars, same silence, same waiting. Silas Vance, she says. Dale's jaw works once hard before he speaks again. I know that name. You know him? Everyone who served with your father knew him, Dale says. 3 of us once. Your father, me, and him. I haven't spoken to Silas Vance in a decade. Didn't want to. Didn't know why exactly. Just something about the way he left the service always sat wrong with me. Now I think I know why. Ezra looks between them, quiet, absorbing the weight of a conversation that has shifted in the space of one name from investigation into something closer to reckoning. So what do we do first? He says. First, Nora says, we go back to the beginning. We find out what actually happened the night my father died. Not the version in the file, the version underneath it. And after that? Dale asks. Nora's eyes go flat and steady, the exact stillness her father used to carry into rooms that were about to become dangerous. After that, she says, we find out how deep Silas Vance's roots go. Because if he could bury a decorated sniper for 12 years without anyone noticing, he isn't a man working alone. He's a man who built something, and I intend to find out exactly how large it's grown. Outside, the Virginia night presses close against the windows, and somewhere beyond the tree line, a truck passes on the county road, headlights sweeping briefly across the ceiling before disappearing again into the dark. Nora watches the light travel and fade and thinks, not for the first time, about the fence post behind her father's cabin and the can that used to jump when she did the work right. She thinks, I did the work right for 12 years. Nobody noticed. Nobody was supposed to. She thinks they noticed now. And underneath that thought, quiet, insistent, the same voice that has kept her alive since she was 15 years old. So finish it. Because he taught you to take one shot, and you have been aiming this one for 12 years. Marlene appears in the doorway with a fresh pot of tea, takes one look at the 3 of them, the old soldier by the window, the young corpsman on the arm of the couch, the woman with a crushed leg and an unbreakable spine sitting between them, and says nothing at all. Just sets the tray down and pours and lets the quiet in the room do the work that words cannot. Because some nights do not need commentary. They only need people willing to sit inside them together and wait for morning and begin.
Later, long after Marlene has gone up to bed and Dale has retreated to the study with a legal pad and a decade of memory he is trying to put back in order, Ezra finds Nora still on the porch, crutches propped against the railing, watching the tree line, the way she has been watching it all night. "Couldn't sleep either," he says, not a question. "Haven't tried yet." He sits on the step beside her, close enough that she can feel the warmth of him through the cold Virginia air, comfortable in a way that surprises her, given that 4 days ago she did not know his name, and now cannot quite picture the last week without his voice in it. "You know," he says, "when Chief told me who you were, whose daughter, I almost didn't believe him." "Why not?" "Because I read that incident report. Years ago. Training accident, tragic loss, case closed. I remember thinking even then something about it read wrong, too clean, too quiet." He glances at her sideways. "Guess some part of me already knew, just didn't have anywhere to put it." "Welcome to the club," Nora says. "I've been carrying it 12 years and I still don't have anywhere to put it." "Maybe that's what tonight was," Ezra says, "a place to start putting it." She considers that. The kitchen table and Marlene's hand over hers, and Dale's face cracking open around a name he thought he already understood, and this, a young corpsman on porch steps at midnight offering her company instead of promises, which she is starting to think might be the more honest gift of the two. "My father used to say the hardest part of surviving something isn't the surviving," Nora says quietly. "It's learning to let people help carry what's left over afterward." "Smart man." "He was," Nora says. Was. She stops, corrects herself the way she has corrected herself 1,000 times in 12 years and never quite gotten used to. "It doesn't get easier deciding which tense to use." "Then don't decide tonight," Ezra says. "Some things don't need to be settled all at once." The wind moves through the trees, carrying with it the particular hush of rural Virginia at midnight. So different from Montana, and yet in this one narrow window of quiet, achingly similar. Nora closes her eyes, listens, breathes. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. For the first time in 3 days, the counting is not about surviving. It is just about being here. "I should probably let you sleep," Ezra says eventually, rising, offering her a hand she does not this time refuse. "Probably," she agrees. "Doesn't mean I will." "No," he says, smiling faintly in the porch light. "I don't imagine it does." He helps her up, steadies her crutches, and for one brief, unguarded moment, standing together in the cold dark with an entire conspiracy still ahead of them, Nora Kessler lets herself feel something she has not allowed in 12 years. Not safety, exactly. She is not naive enough to call it that, not yet, but something close to it. Something that might, given time, become it. Behind her, through the window, the study light is still on. Dale, hunched over his legal pad, rewriting 12 years of assumptions, one careful line at a time. Somewhere upstairs, Marlene sleeps the particular sleep of a woman who has decided, without being asked, to take in a stranger and call her family, before the paperwork of the heart has even caught up. And somewhere out there, past the tree line, past the county road, past the whole quiet architecture of a life Nora built to disappear inside of a man she used to call Uncle Silas, is receiving a phone call he has been dreading for 12 years, informing him that the daughter he thought was buried is instead wide awake, asking questions. She does not know that yet. Not tonight. Tonight she only knows the cold porch air and the steadiness of a hand she let herself take, and the fragile, unfamiliar shape of a house that is, for the first time in longer than she can remember, starting to feel less like a hiding place and more like a home. Tomorrow the war will still be waiting. Tonight she lets herself have this instead. A safe house outside Suffolk, Virginia, 3 days later. The map spread across the kitchen table has more pins in it than Nora has slept hours in the last week. Which is not saying much, because sleep lately is something that happens to other people. People who do not close their eyes and see a dented Snickers bar. People who do not wake up gasping because some part of her brain is still convinced she is under 6 floors of concrete. "You look like hell," Dale says, not unkindly, just factual.
Thank you, Nora says. I try.
Ezra looks up from the coffee maker, one eyebrow raised. She's got jokes now. That's new.
That's called delirium,
Nora says. Enjoy it while it lasts. Dale taps the map. Northeast corner. A cluster of blue pins around the Norfolk waterfront. This is Cordell Dynamics registered shipping terminal. Legitimate business on paper. Private security contracts overseas, logistics, the whole clean facade.
And underneath the facade? Ezra asks.
Underneath, Nora says,
is where it gets interesting.
She pulls a folder from her bag, the same bag she never let go of, not even under the rubble, not even when her leg was crushed and her ribs were screaming and every rational part of her brain was saying, let it go, it does not matter, survive first. She never let it go. Because inside that folder is 12 years of her life, bank records, shipping manifests, a paper trail so carefully hidden it took her 9 years just to find the first thread. My father figured out that Cordell, back then it was called something else, a name that does not exist on any registry anymore, was skimming weapons off legitimate DoD contracts. Small amounts at first. A crate here, a pallet there, enough to disappear into rounding errors. And now, Dale asks, now it is not rounding errors. Now it is container ships. Silence. The coffee maker gurgles in the background, oblivious. So we're not talking about a corrupt contractor skimming off the top, Ezra says slowly. We're talking about a full supply chain, Nora says. Weapons meant for American units, redirected, sold, to people who should never have access to them. Dale's jaw works. 30 years of service, and there is a version of anger that only surfaces when you understand you have been lied to by your own side. That version is on his face right now. And you think Silas Vance built this? I know he did, Nora says. I just cannot prove it yet, which is why we need eyes inside that terminal. The warehouse district, Norfolk waterfront, that night. The terminal is quiet in the way that dangerous places are always quiet right before they are not. Floodlights throw long shadows between shipping containers stacked 4 high corridors of steel that swallow sound, swallow footsteps, swallow everything, except the low hum of machinery somewhere deep in the yard. Nora moves on a leg that is still healing, still wrapped, still aching with every step, which she hates. Because she used to be fast, because her father raised her to move like a shadow, silent, precise, and now she is limping through a shipping yard like a wounded animal, hoping nobody notices the drag in her stride. Except there is no drag. Anyone can see, in this light, just pain. Which is its own kind of loud if you let it be. Talk to me, Dale murmurs into the comms somewhere behind her, covering the perimeter. I'm fine, Nora whispers back. Wasn't asking if you're fine, asking what you see. Right. Focus. She presses against the cold steel of a container, peers around the edge. 3 men unloading something from the back of an unmarked truck. Crates. Standard military stenciling, except the numbers do not match anything in the public registry she cross-referenced last week. 3 tangos, she breathes. Unloading crates. Stenciled 47 Bravo Sierra. That's not a designation that exists. Copy, Ezra's voice low from his position near the fence line, which means it's a ghost shipment. Which means, Nora says, we're about to have photographic proof that Cordell Dynamics is moving military-grade hardware through a civilian port with fake manifests. She lifts her phone, angles it, waits for the men to shift just enough that the crate markings are clear in frame. Except one of the men turns, not toward her, toward the fence line, toward Ezra's position. Her stomach drops. Ezra, move! I'm good, move, now! A flashlight beam sweeps the fence line, catches nothing. The man turns back to his work, grumbling something to his colleague about rats in the yard. Ezra exhales, shaky over the comm. That was okay. That was closer than I'd like. Welcome to the job, Dale says dryly. Nora gets her photo, 3 actually, from 3 angles, before backing away from the container, moving low, moving quiet, her legs screaming with every step and her mind screaming louder, because there's something else in that photo. Something she does not process until she is back in the truck 3 streets over, hands shaking as she scrolls through the images on a screen too small for the magnitude of what she is looking at. A man. 4th man. Standing at the edge of the frame, half in shadow, clipboard in hand, overseeing the operation like a man who owns the ground he is standing on. She zooms in. Her breath catches.
Nora?
Dale's voice sharp.
What is it?
She does not answer right away, cannot, because the face in the photo, older now, grayer, heavier around the jaw than she remembers, is a face she has not seen since she was 15 years old, sitting at a picnic table behind her father's cabin, laughing at a joke this exact man made about fly fishing.
Uncle Silas,
She whispers. The safe house, Suffolk, the next afternoon. Nora's phone buzzes with a number she almost does not recognize until she remembers the card left on a hospital tray table weeks ago beside a bowl of untouched Jell-O. Special Agent Diaz, she says, answering on the second ring. You're a hard woman to reach, Diaz says, no preamble, the particular clip deficiency of someone who has been trying several channels before landing on the right one. I heard about the warehouse. Nora's stomach tightens. How? Because gunfire at a private shipping terminal tends to show up on a police scanner, and because I've had eyes on Cordell Dynamics for longer than you might think, Diaz says. I told you I had about a week before this got quietly reassigned. That week's up. My supervisor pulled me off the Bellhaven collapse yesterday. Officially, it's closed. Gas leak. Case file sealed. And unofficially? Unofficially, I don't like being told to stop looking at something that clearly does not want to be looked at, Diaz says. I've still got copies of everything. And I've got a name I want to run past you because it came up twice this week in places it shouldn't have. Wesley Cole. Nora goes very still. What about him? Financial disclosure filed 18 months ago shows Cole cleared a debt of just under $60,000 in a single lump payment, Diaz says. No loan on record. No inheritance, no explanation that holds up under a first glance, let alone a second one. So somebody paid him. Somebody paid him, Diaz confirms. I can't do anything official with that anymore, not with my hands tied the way they are right now. But you're clearly doing something unofficial, so take it. Do something useful with it. Why help me at all? Nora asks. If the file's closed and you're off the case. There is a pause on the line, brief but weighted. Because I've worked cases like this before, Diaz says finally. The ones that get quietly buried because somebody upstairs decides the truth is inconvenient. I don't like watching that happen twice to the same family. Your father's file is thin in exactly the same way this one's about to be if people like me stop pushing. Nora closes her eyes. Somewhere behind her, she can hear Ezra moving carefully around the kitchen, favoring his healing shoulder, and Dale's low, private voice from the back bedroom, still not quite closed. Thank you, she says. Don't thank me, Diaz says. Just finish it properly, for both our sakes. The line goes dead. Nora sits with the phone in her hand for a long moment, turning the new information over, fitting it against everything else she already knows. Cole. $60,000, a debt cleared in a single payment 18 months before a shipping schedule moved up 3 hours with no warning. It is not proof. Not yet. But it is another thread pulled tight in a rope that is slowly, undeniably starting to hold its shape. Priya Okafor answers the door in scrubs off a double shift, looking at Nora like she has been half expecting this knock for 3 years and dreading it for just as long. You look worse than the last time, Priya says, stepping aside to let her in. That's saying something, considering the last time you'd just pulled an all-nighter reading shipping manifests in my car. I was in a building that fell down, Nora says. In my defense, buildings don't fall down on people like you by accident, Priya says, closing the door behind her. I read the news. Gas leak, right. And I'm sure the moon's made of cheese. Nora sits at the small kitchen table, the same table where 3 years ago Priya first agreed to help her cross-reference a records request that should never have been approved. in exchange for a debt Nora still has not fully explained, and Priya wisely has stopped asking about. "I need one more favor," Nora says. "You always need one more favor. This is the last one, I promise." Priya studies her for a long moment, arms crossed, the particular weariness of a woman who has spent a career watching people ask for things they should not need and learning slowly which requests to trust anyway. "You said that the last 3 times, Priya says, but she is already reaching for her keys. "Archive access, personnel files. I assume that's what this is?" "Kessler Walter A," Nora says. "Closed personnel file. I need to see the unredacted version." Something shifts in Priya's face. Recognition, maybe, or the particular caution of a woman realizing a favor has just gotten considerably more dangerous than she signed up for. "That name," Priya says slowly. "Any relation?" "He was my father." Priya is quiet for a long moment. Then she sets her keys down on the table, sits across from Nora, and says in a voice much gentler than the one she walked in with, "Then this isn't a favor anymore. This is something else. And I need you to tell me what I'm actually walking into before I open that door for you." So Nora tells her. Not all of it. Not the 12 years, not the full weight of Elizabeth Marsh and the memo and the smudged signature she has not found yet. But enough. Enough that Priya's face goes pale somewhere in the middle of it, and enough that by the end she is nodding slowly, some decision settling into place behind her tired eyes. "Tomorrow night," Priya says. 10 o'clock. Side entrance, east wing. I'll make sure the badge reader's on the old firmware. It won't log the access properly. You'll have maybe 45 minutes before the overnight guard does his second round. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Priya says. "Thank me if it works. And Nora, whatever's actually in that file." "Whatever you find. Be careful who you tell first. Some doors, once you open them, you don't get to close again." Nora will think about that sentence more than once in the days that follow. She will not yet understand exactly how right Priya is. Cordell Dynamics, Corporate Archive, downtown Norfolk, 2 days later. Getting into the archive requires a favor Nora has spent 3 years cultivating and never planned to use. A former DoD records clerk named Priya, who owes her a debt neither of them talks about out loud. It requires a badge that should not work, a side entrance that should not be unlocked, and 45 minutes of pure, heart-hammering silence. It requires mostly Nora keeping her hands from shaking as she pulls file after file from a cabinet marked Closed Personnel, looking for one name in particular. Kessler, Walter A. The file is thin, thinner than a 20-year career should be, which is its own kind of evidence. She opens it at a metal desk under a buzzing fluorescent light, Dale standing guard by the door, Ezra keeping watch outside in the truck. The first page is the official incident report. She has read it before, a redacted, sanitized version obtained through channels that took her years to build. But this copy is not redacted. This copy has names. Her hands go still on the page, because there, in black and white, under a section labeled Witness Statements, is a name she was not expecting. D. Hutchins. She looks up, slowly, at the man standing by the door, arms crossed, jaw set, unaware for one more second that the thing he has been carrying quietly for 12 years is about to become very loud. "Dale," she says. Something in her voice makes him turn immediately. "What? You need to see this." He crosses the room, takes the file, reads. And Nora watches in real time the exact moment a man's understanding of his own past cracks down the middle. "That's not what I said," Dale says. Quiet. Too quiet. I never said any of this." "Read it again." "I don't need to read it again, Nora. I know what I said, and this—" He stops, stares at the page like it might rearrange itself if he glares hard enough. "This is not my statement." "Somebody wrote a statement," Nora says slowly, "and put your name on it." "Then somebody forged federal documentation," Dale says, and his voice has gone somewhere cold now, somewhere Nora has not heard yet. somewhere that makes her understand exactly why this man made Master Chief. And whoever did it had access, real access, not some outside operator, somebody inside the system. Somebody like Silas Vance, Nora says. Dale does not answer, does not need to. His silence is answer enough. She finds the second document 11 minutes later, buried under a stack of unrelated personnel transfers, a single page that should not exist in a closed archive at all. A wire transfer authorization dated 3 days before her father's death, routing $400,000 from a shell account to an offshore holding company. The authorizing signature at the bottom is smudged. Deliberately, she thinks. Deliberately smudged, the way you smudge something you do not want a jury to read clearly. But not smudged enough. S. Vance. There it is, she breathes. Dale leans over her shoulder, reads it twice, 3 times. That's motive, he says. That's real, documented motive. That's not all, Nora says, flipping the page, because underneath the transfer authorization is a memo, internal, 2 lines typed, unsigned. Marsh becoming a liability, handle before Thursday. Her stomach turns to ice. Marsh, she says, Elizabeth Marsh, my cover identity. Except the memo's dated 12 years ago. Ezra's voice cuts in over the comm, having patched in from the truck the moment things went quiet too long. You'd have been 15. You weren't using that name yet. Nora's mind moves fast now, pieces sliding into place with the particular horror of understanding something she should have understood years ago. It does not mean me, she says slowly. It means the identity itself. So my father must have built the Marsh cover first, for himself, an exit plan in case things went bad. When it did not work, when they got to him before he could disappear into it, I inherited the only thing he left behind. A name with a target already stitched into it. The fluorescent light buzzes overhead. Somewhere outside a truck horn sounds, distant, indifferent. We need to get out of here, Dale says quietly. Now, before anyone knows we've seen this. Nora does not move, not yet. She is staring at the memo, at those 11 words that rewrite 12 years of her life in a single, cold sentence. He knew, she says. He knew they were coming for him. And he still taught me to shoot instead of teaching me to run. Because running never saved anyone who mattered, Dale says. He taught you to survive instead. That is not weakness, Nora. That is the last thing a father could give you. She closes the file. Her hands are steady now, steadier than they have been in 3 days. Then I intend to use it, she says. The Dock, Norfolk Naval Support Facility, 4 days later. The plan is simple. Simple enough that Nora does not trust it entirely because nothing in the last 12 years has ever gone according to a simple plan. But simple is what they have. Intercept the next ghost shipment before it leaves port. Photograph the cargo. Match the serial numbers to the stolen DoD inventory. Build a case airtight enough that no forged statement, no smudged signature, no dead man's cover identity can undo it. Lieutenant Commander Wesley Cole is supposed to be running perimeter security, officially assigned by Dale's old command to assist a liaison, a favor, called in through channels neither Nora nor Ezra fully understands, but Dale vouches for him, and Dale's vouching has meant something for 30 years. Which is exactly the problem, because vouching for someone based on 30 years of history assumes the last 5 did not change anything. Position report. Dale murmurs into the comm, crouched behind a stack of pallets near the loading dock. Cole's in position, comes the reply, static, edged, level. Northwest corner, clear line of sight. Copy, Dale says. Nora moves along the fence line with Ezra, cameras ready, waiting for the ship, the Meridian Star, according to the manifest she intercepted, to begin unloading. It is supposed to take 20 minutes. Long enough to document everything, short enough to be gone before anyone notices. Except the timeline is wrong from the start. They're early, Ezra whispers, checking his watch. Manifest said 0100, it's not even midnight. Which means somebody moved the schedule. Nora says, ice crawling up her spine. Which means somebody knew we were coming, Ezra finishes. Because there is only one way a shipping schedule changes on short notice for a covert operation neither of them told anyone outside this small circle about. Cole? Nora breathes. Dale, ask Cole to confirm his position again. A pause, longer than it should be. Cole, confirm position, Dale says into the comm. Silence. Cole, confirm position, over. More silence. The particular kind of silence that arrives right before everything goes wrong. Something's not right, Dale says, standing his hand, already moving toward his weapon. And then the floodlights come on. All of them. Every corner of the yard blazing white, turning the shadows Nora and Ezra were hiding in into nothing at all. Contact! Ezra shouts, already moving. We've got contact northwest. They knew we were gunfire, not warning shots. Real, aimed, close. Nora hits the ground behind a stack of crates, heart slamming against her ribs, and for one terrible suspended second she is back under the rubble, back in the dark, back counting her own heartbeat because it is the only thing she can control. Except this time, there is no 6 hours of Ezra's voice keeping her steady from a distance. This time he is 3 feet away, blood already blooming dark across his shoulder, teeth gritted, still trying to return fire with a hand that will not quite cooperate. Ezra, I'm fine, he grunts, presses his good hand against the wound. I'm fine, go get the photos, get out. I'm not leaving you. Nora! Dale's voice, sharp, commanding, cutting through the chaos like a blade. Get him out, I've got cover, move. She moves, because 12 years of training override 12 years of grief, and some things do not need to be told twice. They make it to the fence line under a hail of return fire from Dale, who moves like a much younger man for exactly as long as it takes to buy them the distance they need. They make it to the truck, Ezra bleeding, gritting through pain that would have flattened most men. Dale sliding into the driver's seat 2 minutes later, breathing hard, a graze along his forearm he does not even acknowledge. Drive, Nora says. Drive, drive, drive! They drive. 3 miles out, a gas station, parking lot, closed for the night. Ezra's shoulder wound is not fatal. Nora has seen worse. Has had worse, technically, 3 weeks ago under 6 floors of concrete. But it is bad enough that her hands shake as she packs the wound with gauze from the truck's first aid kit. Bad enough that Ezra's face has gone gray under the parking lot's flickering sodium light. You're going to be fine, she says. Not a question. An order to the universe. Already knew that, Ezra manages, wincing. You're just confirming it for the group. Dale paces beside the truck, phone in hand, jaw tight enough to crack. Cole's not answering, he says. Not his cell, not his line at the command center, nothing. Because he's the one who sold us out, Nora says quietly. Dale stops pacing, turns. You don't know that. I know the schedule moved up 3 hours with no warning, Nora says. I know Cole was the only person outside this truck who had the timeline, and I know the floodlights came on the exact second we were in position, which means somebody was watching for us specifically, not generally. He's a Navy officer, Dale says. Not defensive, exactly. More like a man trying to talk himself out of a conclusion he already knows is true. I served with men who trusted him. I trusted him. So did my father trust Silas Vance? Nora says, gentle but firm. Trust isn't proof of anything except that people are good at hiding what they are. Dale's face does something complicated, something that looks for just a moment like a man standing at the edge of the same cliff his old friend Walter Kessler must have stood at 12 years ago, the moment you realize the person you trusted with your life has been holding the knife the whole time. If Cole's compromised, Dale says slowly, then whoever's running this Vance, or whoever's above Vance, already knows everything we know. The archive, the photos, all of it. So we're not investigating anymore, Nora says. We're a liability now, same as my father was. Ezra, gray-faced, gauze taped tight against his shoulder, manages a weak, humorless laugh. Great. Love that for us. Which also means, Nora continues, and something in her voice has shifted, gone sharper, colder. The exact tone her father used to use in the split second before he made an irreversible decision. We do not have the luxury of being careful anymore. We go after Vance directly, before he decides it's more efficient to bury all three of us instead of just one. Dale looks at her for a long moment. In the sodium light, with dust and gunpowder residue still clinging to her jacket, she looks less like the woman he pulled half-conscious out of a triage tent 3 weeks ago, and more like the daughter of the man he served beside for 6 years. The resemblance is not in her face. It is in the stillness, the exact same stillness Walter Kessler used to carry into rooms full of chaos. Your father would have done the same thing, Dale says quietly. God help me, that is not a comfort. But it's true. It does not have to be a comfort, Nora says. It just has to be right. 22 years earlier. Naval Special Warfare Training Facility, Coronado, before any of it. Before contractors and shell companies and smudged signatures on wire transfers, before a 15-year-old girl ever held a rifle too big for her shoulders. There were 3 young men standing in a hallway that smelled like chlorine and floor wax, waiting for orders none of them fully understood yet. Dale Hutchins remembers it clearly even now, even with 30 years of memory stacked on top of it like sediment. Walter Kessler, quiet, watchful, the kind of young man who noticed everything and said almost none of it out loud. And Silas Vance, loud in exactly the way Walter was not, charming, in the specific manner of a man who has never once doubted a room would eventually like him. You two are going to get me killed, Vance used to joke back then, back when it was still a joke. Kessler doesn't talk, Hutchins doesn't stop, and somehow I'm the one who has to keep the peace between you. You don't keep the peace, Walter said once, dry as the desert outside the base fence. You just talk the loudest during it. Vance laughed longer at that than the joke deserved. He always did. It was Dale, thinks now, one of his more effective tools, laughing hard enough at his own expense that nobody thought to look closer at what he was actually doing underneath the charm. They served together for 6 years before assignments split them in 3 directions. Dale stayed in the teams. Walter moved into something quieter, something with a designation Dale was never fully read into. The kind of posting that exists in a file somewhere with half its pages blacked out. And Silas? Silas left. Took his charm and his talent for making rooms like him into the private sector where both of those things, it turns out, are worth considerably more money than the government was ever willing to pay him. Dale did not think about him again for years. Did not think about him, in fact, until an envelope arrived at his door 12 years ago carrying the news that his friend Walter Kessler had died in a training accident nobody in his old unit could quite explain the details of. And even then, standing in his own kitchen with that letter in his hand, Dale did not think of Silas Vance. He thinks of him now, constantly, the way you think of a wound once you finally understand it was never an accident at all. Backroads outside Suffolk, an hour later. They stop at a rest area to change Ezra's dressing properly under a working light, and it is there, crouched beside the open truck door with her hands finally steady enough to do careful work, that Nora notices something in Dale she has not let herself notice before. He is quiet in a different way than usual. Not the watchful quiet of a man managing a crisis, something more private, more turned inward. You're somewhere else, she says, not looking up from the bandage. Just thinking. About Cole? About your father, Dale says. About the last time I let a friend's silence talk me out of asking the hard question. I keep telling myself this time will be different. That I'll ask the question before it's too late instead of after. You are asking it, Nora says. Right now. That counts. Does it? He looks out at the dark tree line beyond the rest stop, arms crossed, something working behind his eyes that Nora cannot quite name yet. A private calculation, the kind a man makes when he is already 3 steps ahead of the conversation he is having out loud. I keep thinking there has to be a way to end this without losing anyone else. I just have not found it yet. When you do, Nora says, taping off the last of the gauze, you'll tell me. Before you do it, not after. Dale's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. Of course, he says. It is, she will realize much later, the first time in this entire ordeal that Dale Hutchins has told her something that was not quite the truth. Not a lie, exactly. Just a promise he is already quietly deciding he might not be able to keep. She does not catch it. Not tonight. Tonight, she is too busy watching Ezra's color slowly return, too busy counting her own breath back down from the adrenaline of gunfire and floodlights to notice the small, careful way Dale Hutchins has just begun keeping something from her. Somewhere across town, in an office with a view of the Norfolk waterfront and a bottle of scotch older than most of the men who work for him, Silas Vance sets down his phone. The message is short, 3 words from a number he will delete the moment he reads it twice. Photos confirmed. Handled. He pours himself a drink. Does not smile, exactly. Silas Vance stopped smiling at things a long time ago. But something in his face settles, the particular satisfaction of a man watching a problem resolve itself according to plan. Except the report says 2 escaped, wounded but alive, which means the girl is still out there, which means Walter Kessler's daughter, sharper than her father ever gave her credit for being, if Vance is honest with himself. And Vance is nothing if not honest with himself in the privacy of his own office, is still asking the exact questions her father asked 12 years ago. He looks out at the dark water, at the lights of the port where 3 hours ago, a shipment worth more than most people make in a lifetime slipped quietly out to sea, untouched, undocumented, invisible. You were supposed to stay buried, he says softly, to no one, to the glass in his hand, to the ghost of a friend he stopped mourning the day he decided a friendship was not worth what it would cost him to keep. Both of you. He picks up his phone again, dials a number he has not used in months. It's me, he says when the line connects. We have a complication. Her name is Nora Kessler, and I need her found, tonight. He hangs up before waiting for a reply. Outside his window, the water is black and endless, and somewhere on the other side of that darkness, a woman who spent 12 years learning to disappear is about to discover that the only way out of this now is straight through the man who taught her, without ever meaning to, exactly how much she is her father's daughter. The safe house, Suffolk, 2 days later. The bandages come off Ezra's shoulder slower than anyone would like, and Nora spends the downtime the way she has spent every quiet hour of the last 12 years working, cross-referencing bank records against shipping logs, against the smudged signature that will not quite resolve into anything a court could use on its own. Dale spends the downtime differently, on the phone mostly, in the back bedroom, with the door not quite closed, voice pitched low in a way Nora notices but does not yet question. Who was that? She asks when he finally emerges, rubbing a hand over his face like a man who has not slept properly and longer than he is willing to admit. Old contact, Dale says. Nothing yet. It is technically not a lie. It is also not the whole truth, and some part of Nora, the part her father trained to notice everything, to catalog the small inconsistencies before they become large ones, files the moment away, without fully understanding yet that she has just watched the first thread of a second betrayal begin to unspool. We need Cole found, Ezra says from the couch, wincing as he shifts his bandaged shoulder. Dead or working both sides, either way, we need to know which. I'm working on it, Dale says. Working on it how? Nora asks. Dale looks at her. For just a second, something crosses his face. Calculation, maybe, or guilt, or the particular tiredness of a man carrying a plan he has not yet decided how to share. Then it is gone, smoothed over by 30 years of practice, keeping his face exactly as unreadable as the job requires. I have some old channels, he says, people who owe me favors. Give me a few more days. It is enough of an answer that Nora lets it go, for now. She has learned over 12 years when to push and when a door is better left closed until the right moment reveals what is behind it. Tonight, Exhausted, aching, still cataloging photographs of Silas Vance's face in a floodlit warehouse yard, she chooses to let it close. She will not always have that luxury, but tonight she does not yet know that either. Late that night, unable to sleep, she finds Ezra on the back porch, his arm in a sling, watching the same dark tree line Nora has come to think of as the only landscape that has felt honest to her since the building came down.
"You should be resting," she says. "So should you."
He shifts over, making room on the step, wincing only slightly. "Come, sit. Misery loves company, and apparently so does insomnia." She sits. The Virginia night is cold in the particular way that autumn nights are cold, clean and sharp, nothing like the wet gray chill of the hospital room where all of this technically began.
"Thank you," she says after a while, "for the warehouse. For not letting me go back for you when you told me to run."
"Wasn't a hard call," Ezra says. "You get the evidence out, I get patched up. Everybody lives. Simple math."
"Nothing about this has been simple math."
"No," he agrees, "but it should have been. And that's the part that bothers me more than the bullet."
She looks at him, at the line of tension in his jaw that has nothing to do with the wound in his shoulder. "Cole," she says.
"Cole," he confirms. "I served with guys like him. Good instincts, steady hands, the whole package. And now I've got no idea whether he's compromised or dead in a ditch somewhere, and honestly, Nora, I don't know which answer scares me more."
"Compromised," Nora says quietly. "Because dead in a ditch means he's a victim. Compromised means somebody I'm supposed to trust chose the other side, and I have to sit with the fact that I did not see it coming."
"You saw it coming with Vance."
"I grew up watching Vance," she says. "I've had 12 years to build the file in my head before I ever built the one in my bag. Cole I only just met.
So either my instincts are slipping, or some people are simply better at hiding than others. For what it's worth, Ezra says, my money's on the second one. She almost smiles. Almost.
"Get some sleep," she says instead, rising, offering him a hand up that he takes without hesitation this time, the ease of it settling something quiet and warm in her chest, despite everything else pressing down on it.
"We've got a war to finish. Can't do that running on empty." "Neither can you," he says, and there is something gentle underneath it. Something that feels, for just a moment, like being looked after instead of only looking after everyone else. She lets that feeling sit with her, unexamined, all the way back to her room. It is easier than examining the other feeling, the small, unplaced unease she still carries about the low voice behind Dale's not quite closed door and the promise he made her at the rest stop, that some part of her quietly is already starting to doubt. Tomorrow, she decides. She will ask him again tomorrow. She does not know yet how much tomorrow is going to cost either of them. Later, still unable to sleep despite everything her body is asking of her, Nora sits at the kitchen table with the folder open in front of her one more time, the way she has 1,000 nights before this one. The wire transfer authorization, the unsigned memo, the photograph of Silas Vance in a floodlit warehouse yard, older now, heavier, but unmistakably the man who taught her to tie a fishing lure at a picnic table behind her father's cabin. She thinks about her father's voice, low and even, teaching her to notice the way the grass bends before the wind arrives to explain itself. She thinks about the 30 days he gave a friend who did not deserve them. She thinks about Dale in the next room carrying his own version of that same mercy, 30 years of loyalty to a man he has not yet fully admitted, even to himself, might have to be treated as an enemy. Mercy is not weakness, her father used to say. But mercy without vigilance is just another way of getting killed slowly. She writes that down on the inside cover of the folder in handwriting that looks more like his than her own. Then she closes it, sets it aside, and for the first time in longer than she can remember, allows herself to simply sit in a quiet kitchen in a house that is not truly hers, surrounded by people who have, against every instinct 12 years of solitude taught her to trust, become something like family. Ezra finds her there an hour later, moving quietly on his way to the refrigerator, and stops in the doorway when he sees her still awake. "You're supposed to be resting," she says, echoing his own words back at him from days ago. Physician, heal thyself, he says, settling into the chair across from her instead of continuing to the refrigerator.
What's keeping you up? Everything, she admits, which is more honest than she intends to be and more honest than she has been with almost anyone in 12 years. The case, Cole, whatever Dale's not telling us, the fact that in a week we're supposed to walk up to the man who had my father killed and somehow come out the other side of that conversation still breathing.
Ezra is quiet for a moment, turning something over.
For what it's worth, he says finally,
I don't think you're walking into that alone, whatever else is true. Whatever Dale's keeping close to his chest right now, and for the record, I've noticed it too. You've got people standing next to you who are not going anywhere.
You don't know that. Not really. People leave, or they turn out to be something other than what they showed you.
Some do, Ezra says. Doesn't mean all of us will. She looks at him across the table in the low kitchen light, and something in her, something guarded, something that has spent 12 years assuming the worst of every closed door and every hushed phone call, softens just slightly around the edges.
My father used to say the same thing, she says quietly, about some people.
Smart man.
He also got himself killed, trusting the wrong one, Nora says. So forgive me if I'm not entirely ready to take that leap of faith twice in one lifetime.
Fair, Ezra says. I'm not asking you to leap. Just to notice maybe that not every hand reaching toward you is holding a knife behind its back. She thinks about that long after he has gone back to bed, long after the house has gone fully quiet around her. The only sound, the wind moving through the tree line outside, and somewhere down the hall, the faint, steady rhythm of people she has allowed against every hard-won instinct to matter to her. Tomorrow, she thinks. Tomorrow they go after Silas Vance in earnest. Tomorrow, the last of the careful, patient work her father spent 12 years teaching her to do finally gets tested against the man who ended his life for refusing to look away from the truth. She closes her eyes, breathes. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Somewhere out past the dark tree line, past the county road, past every quiet mile between this kitchen table and the office where Silas Vance is at this exact moment, making arrangements neither Dale, nor Ezra, nor Nora yet fully understand. The next phase of this war is already being written in phone calls and shell accounts and old loyalties quietly bending under new pressure. Nora does not know all of it yet. But she knows enough to understand that whatever peace she has found in this borrowed kitchen, in this borrowed family, is running on borrowed time. She closes the folder one last time and finally lets herself sleep. Outside, the Virginia night holds its quiet a little longer, patient in the way only nights before a reckoning ever seem to be. Somewhere down the hall, Dale Hutchins lies awake as well, staring at a ceiling that offers him no answers, turning over a plan he has not yet found the courage to say out loud. And somewhere, far beyond the tree line, in an office that smells like scotch and old ambition, Silas Vance sets his own pieces into motion, unaware that the daughter of the man he once called brother has already begun closing in on the exact shape of what he built to bury the truth. Morning will bring all of it forward at once. For now, the house sleeps, fragile and borrowed, and for one more night, unbroken. The safe house, Suffolk, the next morning. Nora wakes to the smell of coffee and the sound of a voice she is not supposed to be hearing. Dale, in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, back turned to the hallway, unaware she is standing there in the doorway in socked feet, still half asleep, still trying to place why the cadence of his voice sounds so carefully rehearsed. Confirm it's accurate. Yes. Alive, asking questions, getting close. A pause. I understand the risk. Do it anyway. Nora's blood goes cold before her mind has even finished processing the words. Dale? He turns. Does not startle. Exactly 30 years of training does not startle easily, but something crosses his face that she has never seen there before. Guilt, plain and unhidden. The mask finally slipping all the way off. Nora? Who was that? He sets the phone down on the counter, slowly, the way a man sets down a weapon when he has decided the fight is over before it starts. "An old contact," he says, "somebody who still has a channel into Vance's circle. I asked them to let it slip that you survived, that you're alive asking questions closing in." The kitchen goes very quiet. Somewhere down the hall, Ezra's door creaks awake listening, not yet stepping into a conversation that clearly does not belong to him. "You used me as bait," Nora says, flat, careful. The particular careful of a woman keeping her voice level because the alternative is something she does not trust herself to control. "Without telling me." "I used myself too," Dale says, "because if Vance thinks you're getting close, he comes to us instead of running. That was the only way to end this before someone else got killed, before you got killed. You should have told me. Would you have agreed to it?" Silence, because they both already know the answer. "No," Nora says quietly, "I would not have." "That's why I did not ask." She looks at him, this man who pulled her from wreckage with his own hands, fed her at his own table, through his wife, taught her that trust could still exist after 12 years of learning otherwise, and for one sharp, furious second, she does not know if she trusts him at all anymore. "You told me at that rest stop you'd tell me before you did anything. You looked me in the eye and said it." "I know." "That's not an old contact you were talking to just now. That's the plan already in motion." Dale does not deny it. He is not a man built to lie twice in one conversation, and something in his shoulders sags finally under the weight of admitting it. "It is," he says. "It's been in motion for 4 days. I'm sorry. Not for the plan. The plan is sound. I'm sorry for the 4 days I let you trust a promise I already knew I couldn't keep." Ezra appears in the hallway now, dressed quiet, taking in the tension in the room with the particular caution of a man who understands he has walked into the middle of something that is not his to referee. "Everybody, breathe," he says carefully, "before anybody says something that outlives the anger that's saying it." Nora's jaw tightens. She wants to argue, wants to let the fury sitting hot in her chest have its say. But some old part of her trained patient, her father's voice underneath her own, reminds her that fury is a luxury she does not currently have time for. "Don't do that again," she says finally to Dale. "Not ever. Not to me." "I won't," Dale says, "because next time I'll ask first, even if the answer's no." It is not forgiveness, not yet. But it is enough of a foundation to stand on for the next few hours, which, as it turns out, is exactly how long they have left before the whole thing comes to a head. The drive to the airfield that evening. The truck is quiet, except for the hum of tires on old asphalt, and Nora spends most of the drive checking her weapon for the 3rd time, not because it needs checking, but because her hands need something to do that is not shaking. Ezra sits beside her in the back seat, his sling finally gone, the shoulder healed enough that Diaz cleared him for light duty, against, Nora suspects, her better instincts. "You don't have to come," Nora says, not looking up from the rifle. "Neither do you," Ezra says. "And yet, different circumstances. Are they?" He watches her for a moment, the particular patient attention that has become over the last weeks one of the few constants she has allowed herself to rely on. "You're not just doing this for the case anymore?"
"I don't think you have been for a while."
She sets the rifle down, looks out the window at the dark tree line rushing past, Virginia bleeding into a blur of black pine and passing headlights. "My father used to say a person only really finishes something when they stop needing it to define them," she says. "I've spent 12 years needing this. The investigation, the evidence, all of it. I don't know who I am on the other side of finishing it." "You'll figure it out," Ezra says. "Same way you figured out everything else, one deliberate step at a time." "That's very optimistic of you. I've watched you survive a building falling on you and come out the other side making jokes about vending machine snacks," Ezra says. "I have a lot of faith in your ability to figure things out." She almost laughs. Almost. It has become, she realizes, a familiar rhythm between them, the almost laugh, the space just before real feeling breaks through the careful control she has spent 12 years building around herself. "Whatever happens tonight," she says, quieter now, "thank you for all of it."
The 6 hours in the rubble, the parallel bars, the porch steps, all of it. You don't have to thank me for any of that. I know. I'm doing it anyway. Up front, Dale's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, catching the exchange. Something unreadable passing behind his expression. Not quite guilt anymore. Not quite the raw wound from that morning's confrontation, but something adjacent to both. A man watching two people find something steady in the middle of a war he helped, however carefully, engineer. 2 minutes out, Dale says, breaking the quiet. Whatever's about to happen in there, I want you both to know something. Dale, Nora starts. Let me finish, he says. I know I broke something between us this morning. I know an apology doesn't undo it. But I need you to know that everything I did because I could not stomach the idea of losing another person I loved to that man's silence. I already lost Walt. I was not going to lose you too, even if the way I tried to prevent it was wrong. Nora is quiet for a long moment, watching the airfield's distant lights grow larger through the windshield. I know, she says finally. That's the hardest part of forgiving you. Knowing you did it for the right reason and the wrong method, both at the same time. Story of my whole career. Dale says something wry and tired in it. Right reasons, wrong methods. Someday, I'll get both right at once. Tonight would be a good night to start, Ezra says. Dale's mouth twitches almost a smile as he pulls the truck off the county road and kills the headlights. The airfield's floodlights rising ahead of them like the edge of something neither fully ending nor fully beginning. A private airfield outskirts of Virginia that night. The hangar smells like jet fuel and old rain. Nora crouches behind a stack of oil drums, night vision goggles pushed up on her forehead because the moon tonight is doing the job just fine on its own. Full, cold, indifferent to the fact that in about 4 minutes, everything she has spent 12 years chasing is about to walk out of a private jet 40 yards away. You sure about this? Dale murmurs beside her. Not really a question, more like a man giving her one last chance to say no, an unspoken apology folded into the offer. No, Nora says honestly, but I'm doing it anyway. That's not comforting. Was not trying to be. Ezra's voice crackles through the calm, thin with the particular strain of a man weeks out from a gunshot wound, positioned at the perimeter fence against everyone's better judgment and his own doctor's explicit orders. Movement. Cabin doors opening. Nora's chest goes tight, because there it is, the stairs unfolding, the silhouette of a man stepping down onto the floodlit tarmac, moving with the unhurried confidence of someone who has never once in his life questioned whether he belonged wherever he happened to be standing. Silas Vance. Older than the photograph from the shipping yard. Grayer. But the walk is the same. The walk she remembers from a picnic table behind her father's cabin, a man laughing too loud at his own jokes, ruffling her hair, calling her kiddo, like he had any right to a nickname that soft. Kiddo. Do not now, feel it later, feel it after. He's alone, Dale breathes. That's wrong. Man like that doesn't travel alone. Which means he wants to be found, Nora says slowly. Which means this is a trap. Which means we walk into it anyway, Dale says, because we're out of other options. She almost laughs. Almost. Because that is exactly the kind of thing her father used to say right before doing something reckless and calling it strategy. She steps out from behind the drums. Vance sees her immediately, does not flinch, does not reach for a weapon, just stands there in the floodlight, hands loose at his sides, and smiles. Actually smiles, warm, easy, the exact smile from 12 years ago. Like she is a guest arriving late to a party he has been expecting all along. There she is, he says. God, Nora. Look at you. Do not, she says, voice flat, steady, her father's voice. Do not act like you're happy to see me. I am happy to see you. He spreads his hands, palms up, the picture of a man with nothing to hide. You were 15 the last time I saw you. Little thing with a rifle too big for her shoulders. And now look. Your father would be, do not, Nora says again, sharper this time. Do not you dare finish that sentence.
Silas's smile falters. Just slightly. Just enough. You've been busy, he says instead, tone shifting cooler now. Archive break-ins, waterfront surveillance. You're very much your father's daughter. You know that? Same stubbornness. Same inability to leave well enough alone. He's dead because of you, Nora says. Silence. The floodlights hum overhead. Somewhere behind her she can feel Dale's stillness coiled, ready. He's dead, Silas says slowly, because he made a choice. What choice? Nora says. Her voice does not shake. She will not let it. Silas studies her, really studies her the way a man looks at a chessboard when he realizes his opponent has been 3 moves ahead the entire game. 12 years ago, he says, I made a mistake. Small, at first. A few contracts redirected. Money that was not going to be missed from people who would not have cared if it was. Your father found out. Because of course he did. Walt could smell a lie from across a parade ground. And he reported you? Nora says. That is not a mistake on his part. That is the job. He did not report me, Silas says, and something in his voice, something old, something that might, in another life, in another man, have been genuine regret, cracks through for just a second. That's the part you don't know. That's the part nobody knows because your father never told a soul. He came to me instead, sat me down, told me he'd seen the transfers, told me I had 30 days to make it right or he'd bury me himself. Nora's breath catches. He gave you a chance. He gave me mercy, Silas says, and the word comes out bitter, twisted like it has been rotting in his mouth for 12 years. Which I did not deserve, which I did not use, because by the time those 30 days were up, I'd built something too big to walk away from. Contracts, buyers, a whole architecture of money that does not care about the conscience of one honest sniper. So you killed him instead. I did not pull the trigger, Silas says quietly. I want you to understand that. I have never in my entire life pulled a trigger on another human being. I hired people who did that. Which I've told myself for 12 years makes me different from a murderer. It does not, Nora says. No, Silas agrees, and for one strange, suspended moment he looks almost old, almost human. It doesn't. I know that. I've known that every single day since. Dale steps forward now out of the shadows, and Silas's eyes flick to him with something like recognition, something like an old wound reopening. Dale Hutchins, Silas says. Been a long time. Not long enough, Dale says. You served with him too, Nora says, slowly looking between the two men. You knew each other. Before. We were all the same unit, once, Dale says, eyes never leaving Vance. 3 of us. Walt, me, and this. He stops, chooses the next word carefully. This man. I loved him, Silas says, and it is the first thing he has said tonight that sounds entirely, uncomfortably true. Walt. I loved him like a brother. That's the part nobody wants to hear in the story where I'm the villain. I did not stop loving him. I just loved money more. And by the time I understood the difference, it was too late to choose right. Except it's never too late, Nora says. You could have stopped. Any day in 12 years you could have stopped. Could I? Silas's voice sharpens, finally the mask slipping to show something colder underneath. You have no idea what stopping costs a man like me. The people I answer to do not accept resignation letters, Nora. They accept results or they accept bodies. I chose to keep providing results. And now? Dale says. What do you choose now? Silas looks at Nora for a long moment. The floodlights flicker just once, some electrical hiccup in the old airfield wiring, and in that half-second of near dark something in his face changes. Now, he says quietly, I choose to finish what I started, because I cannot undo 12 years, but I can make sure it ends here, tonight, cleanly. His hand moves toward his jacket. Everything happens very fast. Ezra's voice explodes through the comm. Gun! He's got a...
Dale is already moving, already between Nora and the threat, the old instinct of 30 years of service overriding everything else, and Nora is screaming his name, and the world narrows down to one single terrible half-second where she understands with absolute clarity that she is about to lose a second father in exactly the same way she lost the first. Except the shot does not come from Silas, it comes from behind him, from the tree line at the edge of the airfield where a figure Nora had not clocked, had not seen, steps out of the shadows with a rifle raised and fires once, precise, controlled, the exact kind of shot her father spent a lifetime teaching her to take. Silas crumples. Not dead, the shot catches his shoulder, spins him, drops him to the tarmac with a scream that is more shock than pain, and the figure steps into the floodlight, rifle still raised, and Nora's entire understanding of tonight rearranges itself in the space of a single breath. Cole, Dale breathes. Lieutenant Commander Wesley Cole. Alive, uninjured, standing there, like he has not been missing for weeks, like he did not sell them out to a floodlit ambush at the shipping yard, like none of it happened at all. "Do not," Cole says when Dale's hand moves toward his own weapon. "I'm not your enemy. Not anymore." "You shut us up," Ezra's voice furious, crackling through the comm as he limps closer, weapon trained on Cole despite the healing wound in his shoulder. "You gave Vance our timeline. I trusted you." "I gave Vance a timeline," Cole says, "because Vance has been paying me for 2 years to feed him information, which I did, which I am not proud of, which is also exactly how I've been feeding federal investigators everything Vance has told me for the last 6 months. Silence, the kind that has weight. Nora feels the shape of it settle over the tarmac, over all of them, the particular stillness that follows a truth nobody quite expected to hear, delivered exactly this way, in exactly this place, with a wounded man bleeding between them and sirens already rising in the distance. "You're a plant," Nora says slowly. "Not a traitor. A plant." "Both, if we're being honest," Cole says, lowering the rifle finally, his hands shaking now that the adrenaline is receding. "I took his money. I hated myself every single day I took it. And then NCIS came to me 8 months ago with evidence I was already dirty, and I had a choice, prison or redemption. I chose the hard way." "You could have told us," Dale says, voice hard. "I could not tell anyone," Cole says. "That was the deal. Compartmentalized, need-to-know federal case that's been building for months. If I'd told you and Vance had even suspected I'd told you, this whole operation collapses and he disappears with every piece of evidence we need." Nora looks at the man on the ground. Silas Vance bleeding into the tarmac, the architect of 12 years of her grief, finally physically small in front of her. "So all of this," she says, "the warehouse, the gunfire, Ezra getting shot, all of it was necessary." Cole says quietly, "I'm sorry. I am. But it had to look real or he'd have known." "Agent Diaz," Nora says slowly, pieces clicking into place. "She said her case got closed, reassigned. But she kept working it unofficially. She was running you, wasn't she?" "She's been running me for 6 months, Cole confirms. "Longer than she's had eyes on you, if that helps at all. This was never just about your father, Nora. It was a federal case with multiple threads. You just happened to be standing at the center of the one that mattered most." Nora crouches beside Silas. His breathing is ragged, blood spreading dark across his shirt, and for one unguarded moment, looking down at the man who ordered her father's death, she understands she has a choice standing in front of her. The same choice she realizes with a jolt her father once offered this exact man 12 years ago. Mercy or justice. They're not always the same thing. "Nora," Silas rasps, "I am sorry. For whatever that's worth to you now." "It's not worth anything," she says. "Not to me." "Then why," he manages, "are you the one keeping pressure on this wound instead of walking away?" She looks at her hands pressed against his shoulder, slowing the bleeding without meaning to.
Some old instinct from a Montana cabin where her father taught her that a life is a life, even the ones that do not deserve saving.
Because I am not you, she says. That is why.
Sirens in the distance now, real ones, federal from the sound of the pattern. Cole's backup arriving, exactly on schedule, the invisible machinery of a months-long investigation finally clicking into place around them. He'll face a real court, Cole says quietly, standing over them. Real charges, real consequences. 12 years of documented fraud, arms trafficking, and accessory to murder. He's not walking away from this, Nora. I promise you that. Nora looks up at him, at Dale, still tense, still watching Cole like he is not entirely sure whether to trust the ground he is standing on. At Ezra, pale, favoring his healing shoulder. Alive, despite everything.
Good, she says, because I did not come here for revenge.
Then why did you come? Silas whispers, genuinely curious, even now, even bleeding out on an airfield tarmac.
Because my father deserved the truth, Nora says, and I was the only one left to go get it.
Federal Holding Facility, Norfolk, 4 hours later. The interviews take 4 hours. Statements, evidence logs. Special Agent Renata Diaz off the sealed Belhaven file on paper but very much running the room in practice, flips through the folder Nora never let go of, not once, not through any of it.
This is extraordinary, Diaz says. Bank records, shipping manifests, the falsified incident report, this alone is enough to reopen your father's case as a homicide investigation.
I know, Nora says. That is why I built it. 12 years.
Diaz says something like awe in her voice.
You have been building this case for 12 years. I have been trying to bring my father home, Nora says. The evidence was just how I got there.
Diaz closes the folder, looks at her for a long moment. Vance is looking at multiple federal charges, arms trafficking, fraud conspiracy, and, pending further investigation, accessory to your father's murder. He is not walking out of custody again, not this time. And Cole? Cole's cooperation gets weighed by a judge, Diaz says. I'll be testifying to how much his information was worth. It will not erase what he did.
But it should matter in the end, how he chose to end it.
Nora nods, does not cry, does not collapse with relief exactly, though something in her chest does loosen finally after 12 years of being coiled so tight she had forgotten what it felt like not to be braced. In the hallway outside the interview rooms, Priya is waiting, still in scrubs, having driven straight from a night shift the moment Diaz called to tell her it was safe to come.
You're alive,
Priya says, and there is real relief in it. The particular relief of a woman who spent the last several days wondering if the favor she granted had gotten someone she cares about killed.
Barely, Nora says, but yes. I'm never doing archive access for you again, Priya says.
Though the fierceness in it does not quite land the way she probably intends, undercut by how tightly she is gripping Nora's arm.
I mean it this time. You said that the last 3 times too. I know.
Priya lets out a long breath.
Doesn't mean I don't mean it more each time.
Nora studies her for a moment, this woman who owed her nothing technically beyond an old debt neither of them fully discusses, who kept showing up anyway, who risked her own career on a badge reader with outdated firmware because Nora asked her to.
Thank you, Nora says, for all of it. 3 years of favors I never should have asked for. You're welcome, Priya says. Now go be somewhere safe for a while. I mean it. Somewhere that isn't a warehouse or an airfield or a building that's actively trying to kill you. I have somewhere, Nora says, thinking of a cabin in Montana she has not let herself think about, really think about, as a home in longer than she can remember.
I think I'm finally ready to go back to it.
Cole finds her before she leaves the facility that night, standing awkwardly near the exit like a man who has rehearsed an apology several times and still is not confident it will land.
For what it's worth, he says, I never wanted any of you hurt. That was never part of the plan I agreed to.
I know, Nora says. And she does, mostly, the same way she has learned over the last month that most people carry more complexity in them than a single label like traitor or hero can hold.
Doing the wrong thing for the right reason doesn't erase the wrong thing, but it also isn't nothing. Diaz says my cooperation will factor into sentencing, Cole says.
Might mean the difference between years and decades, depending on the judge. Then I hope it does, Nora says. Not because you deserve an easy ending, because my father believed people could still choose to do the right thing even after doing the wrong one for a long time. I'd rather believe that too than spend the rest of my life assuming everyone's beyond it. Cole looks at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Gratitude, maybe? Or the particular ache of a man who expected judgment and received something closer to grace instead. Your father sounds like he was a good man, he says. He was, Nora says. Complicated, but good. I'm still learning how those two things fit together in the same person. It is, she thinks, the truest thing she has said all day, perhaps all year. That people, even the ones who fail spectacularly, even the ones who choose wrong for years before choosing right, can still hold both truths at once. Her father taught her precision with a rifle. Cole, in his own strange, complicated way, has just taught her something about precision of a different kind. The exactness required to hold judgment and grace in the same open hand without letting either one collapse into the other. Outside the interview room, Dale is waiting. He does not say anything at first when she steps out, just stands there, hands in his pockets, the posture of a man bracing for whatever she still has left to say to him. You were wrong to keep it from me, Nora says. I need you to know I still mean that. I know. But you also just watched a man bleed out on a runway because he was willing to bury 3 of us the same way he buried my father. And you still put yourself between me and that gun before Cole's shot ever landed. She lets out a breath. Both things are true. I don't know yet how to hold both of them at the same time. Neither do I, Dale admits, but I'd like the chance to try. If you'll let me. Nora looks at him for a long moment. This flawed, steady, complicated man who lied to her once, out of love and fear in equal measure, and who has otherwise given her more of a family in a few short weeks than she has had in 12 long years. Okay, she says finally, but no more secret plans ever. That's not a request. Understood, Dale says, loud and clear. For a moment, neither of them says anything else, the truck idling quietly beneath them, the airfield's floodlights receding in the rearview mirror as they pull back onto the county road. It is not resolution, exactly. Not yet, not fully, but it is the first honest quiet the two of them have shared since that morning's confrontation in the kitchen, and Nora finds, somewhat to her own surprise, that she is grateful for it. Marlene appears then, having driven 2 hours in the middle of the night the moment Dale called her, because that is who Marlene Hutchins is, a woman who shows up. She takes one look at the 3 of them, pulls Nora into an embrace that Nora for once does not stiffen against. It's over, Nora says, testing the words. They feel strange in her mouth after 12 years of a different sentence entirely. Not over, Marlene says gently. Just the hard part's over. The rest is just living now. She holds on a moment longer than strictly necessary, the way mothers do, the way Nora is slowly learning to let herself be held without immediately calculating an exit, and for once, standing in a fluorescent-lit hallway that smells like industrial coffee and old paperwork, Nora simply lets it happen. Flathead County Cemetery, Montana, 6 weeks later. That same morning. Before the fence post, before the soup can, before any of the quiet rituals that will make up the rest of that long healing day, Nora stands alone at a headstone that has until 3 weeks ago carried the wrong story. Walter A. Kessler. The dates are the same as they always were, but the line beneath them is new, freshly carved, paid for out of Nora's own savings the week the Navy's official correction came through. Killed in the line of duty, investigating criminal activity within a defense contracting relationship. Not a training accident. Not a quiet, convenient lie. The truth finally chiseled into stone where it cannot be smudged, redacted, or buried again. Took long enough, she says quietly, crouching to brush a few stray leaves from the base of the marker. 12 years is a long time to carry something this heavy without anyone believing you.
The Montana wind moves through the pines around her, carrying with it the particular hush of a place that has always felt to Nora more like a held breath than a landscape.
I did the work, she tells him, the way you taught me. Breezed when I needed to, adjusted for the wind, took the shot when it mattered, and didn't when it didn't. I think you'd be proud of that part, even if you're not proud of how long it took. She is quiet for a while after that, just standing, just breathing. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The rhythm that kept her alive under 6 floors of rubble now simply keeping her company in the ordinary business of grief. I found people, she says eventually, softer now, along the way. I don't know if you'd have trusted them as fast as I did. You were always more careful than me about that. But I think in the end you'd have liked them. Dale remembers you exactly the way you'd want to be remembered. And there's someone else, Ezra. I think you'd have liked him a great deal, actually. He's steady in the way you always said mattered most. The wind shifts. Somewhere behind her, gravel crunches under tires, Dale's truck pulling up the narrow cemetery road, giving her space, but not so much that she is ever truly alone with this particular grief anymore. I'll come back, she tells the headstone, rising, brushing dirt from her knees. Every year. I promise you that. And this time, it's a promise I actually intend to keep. She walks back toward the truck, toward the cabin, toward the fence post, waiting with its silvered wood and its dented can, carrying with her for the first time in 12 years something lighter than the grief she arrived with. The Kessler cabin, Flathead Valley, Montana, later that morning. The fence post is still there. 12 years of Montana winters, and the old wood has silvered with age, but it is still standing, right where her father hammered it into the ground when Nora was 7 years old, and asking why they needed a target at all. She sets a fresh soup can on top of it now, dented already because she could not find an undented one in the pantry, and there is something fitting about that, something her father would have appreciated. Dale stands beside her, arms crossed, watching the tree line, the way he watches everything now. Old habits, hard to unlearn. And honestly, Nora has stopped wanting him to unlearn them. You don't have to do this, he says. I know, Nora says. I want to. She lifts the rifle, her father's rifle, actually recovered from evidence storage after 12 years, cleaned, oiled, restored to the exact weight and balance she remembers from being 15 years old on this exact patch of grass. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The wind shifts, grass bending just slightly the way her father taught her to notice. She fires. The can jumps off the post. Behind her, Marlene laughs a warm, surprised sound, and Ezra, leaning against the porch rail with his shoulder finally healed, lets out a low whistle. Your dad taught you well, he says. He taught me everything, Nora says. And for the first time in 12 years, the sentence does not hurt the way it used to. It just sits there, true and warm, like something she is finally allowed to keep instead of grieve. That evening, the cabin is full in a way it has not been since before her father died. Marlene in the kitchen, humming something old and unplaceable while she stirs a pot of something that smells like rosemary and home. Dale, on the porch, phone in hand, arranging what he calls a long overdue formal correction to a 12-year-old incident report. Ezra beside him, teasing him gently about something Nora cannot quite hear, the two of them laughing in a way that makes something in her chest ache pleasantly, the good kind of ache. She stands at the window looking out at the tree line, at the fence post, at the whole quiet, silvered landscape of her childhood, and thinks about her father. Not the grief of him anymore. Just him. The level voice, the patient hands, the mercy he offered a friend who did not deserve it, and the daughter he armed quietly, deliberately, with everything she would need for the day mercy ran out. Ezra steps up beside her at the window, does not say anything at first, just stands there close enough that she can feel the warmth of him, comfortable in a way she has not let herself be comfortable with anyone in longer than she can remember. You okay? He asks finally. Getting there, Nora says, and means it. For what it's worth, he says. I think he'd be proud of you, whatever that's worth coming from someone who only knew him through you. It's worth a lot, actually, Nora says, and something in her voice catches just slightly, just enough. It's worth more than you know. Marlene appears in the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a dish towel, watching the two of them at the window with the particular fondness of a woman who has, over the last 6 weeks, quietly, and without ever announcing it, begun thinking of Nora as something closer to a daughter than a guest. You two planning on eating tonight? Marlene says. Or just standing there being sentimental until the chicken gets cold?
Give us a minute, Ezra calls back, laughing. You've had 6 weeks of minutes, Marlene says, though there is no real complaint in it, just the warm, teasing exasperation of a woman who has earned the right to tease. She disappears back into the kitchen, and Nora watches her go. Something settling, warm and certain in her chest. She's something else, Nora says. She really is, Ezra agrees. You know, she told Dale the week you first showed up here that she wasn't letting either of you leave this family once she'd decided to keep you. His words, not mine. He was terrified to tell you in case it scared you off. It doesn't scare me, Nora says, surprising herself with how easily the words come. Not anymore. I think for a long time I assumed family was just one more thing that got taken from people like me. Turns out, they can also just be something people choose to build, slowly, on purpose. Can I ask you something? Ezra says, before Marlene calls us in and I lose my nerve entirely. That sounds ominous. It's not, I promise. He turns to face her fully now, something unguarded in his expression that she has come to recognize over the last 6 weeks as the particular honesty he only lets show when he has decided something matters enough to risk it. When this is all over, when there's no more case to build, no more evidence to chase, no more danger following you from one state to the next, what happens to us? Nora considers the question with the same careful weight she gives everything else that matters. I don't know yet, she admits. I've spent 12 years being very good at surviving and not particularly practiced at anything that comes after. This is new territory for me. All of it. Fair, Ezra says. For what it's worth, I'm not in a hurry. I just wanted you to know I'm not going anywhere either. Whatever pace you need. That, Nora says quietly, might be the first promise anyone's made me in 12 years that I actually believe. Good, Ezra says, smiling, now easy and warm. Then I'll keep making it, as often as you need to hear it. Outside, the Montana sky is doing the thing it does best at dusk, burning orange and violet along the mountain ridge. The kind of sunset her father used to call God showing off. She used to roll her eyes at that. Tonight, she just watches it quiet, grateful, alive. Dale's voice carries in from the porch, warm with something that sounds almost like laughter, almost like peace. Marlene calls that dinner is ready. Ezra's hand finds hers just briefly, just enough to say, I am here without needing the words at all. And Nora Kessler, daughter of a sniper who chose mercy and paid for it with his life, survivor of 48 hours under a collapsed building, keeper of a truth 12 years in the making, stands in the doorway of the only home she has ever really had, and finally, for the first time in over a decade, lets herself simply exist inside a moment without bracing for the next blow. The soup can, dented and small on its silver fence post, catches the last of the sunset light. Somewhere behind her, a family that grief built out of loss is calling her in to eat. She goes. Epilogue, 1 year later. The letter arrives on an ordinary Tuesday, forwarded through 3 different addresses before it finally finds her, and Nora almost does not open it, assuming it is one more piece of paperwork tied to a case that technically closed months ago, with Silas Vance's conviction on federal charges that will keep him behind bars for the rest of his natural life. It is not paperwork. It is a single page in Agent Diaz's careful handwriting, informing her that the Navy has at long last formally corrected Walter Kessler's service record. Killed in the line of duty, it now reads, in the course of investigating criminal activity within a defense contracting relationship. Survived by his daughter, Nora Kessler. She reads it twice at the kitchen table of the Montana cabin, sunlight falling warm across the old wood floor.
and then she carries it outside to the fence post where a dented soup can still sits from the last time she practiced, and she reads it a third time, out loud, to the wind, to the mountains, to whatever part of her father might still be listening.
They finally got it right, she says.
Behind her, through the open cabin door, she can hear Ezra's laughter mixing with Dale's and Marlene's voice calling out that the coffee is almost ready, and the particular ordinary music of a family that loss built out of nothing, slowly, patiently, into something that finally, entirely holds. She folds the letter carefully,
Tucks it into a jacket pocket close to her heart, the way she once carried a folder she never let go of, even under 6 floors of rubble. Then she picks up the rifle, because some mornings still call for it. Some quiet still asks to be filled with the sound of a can jumping off a post, and she breathes in for 4, and holds for 4, and lets it out for 4, and fires. The can jumps. Behind her, the cabin door opens and Ezra steps out onto the porch with 2 mugs of coffee, handing her one without a word, the small, easy gesture of a life that has slowly, patiently become ordinary in the best possible way. Dale's voice carries faintly from inside, arguing good-naturedly with Marlene about whether the coffee this morning is too strong or exactly right. The same argument they have had, apparently, every single morning for 30 years of marriage, and have no intention of resolving now. Good shot, Ezra says, nodding at the can. I had a good teacher, Nora says.
2, actually, Ezra says, if you count the one currently losing an argument about coffee strength in the kitchen. Nora laughs, a real laugh, unguarded, the kind she used to think she had lost the capacity for entirely, somewhere in the 12 long years of counting breaths and cataloging threats and carrying a folder she never let go of, not even under the weight of a collapsed building.
She sets the rifle down against the fence post, takes the coffee, and looks out at the mountains, at the pines, at the whole wide silvered landscape that raised her, and then, eventually, gave her back to herself. Somewhere, she likes to think, her father is finally, quietly, at peace. And for the first time in longer than she can remember, so is she.